Rachel, what is the unlikely pilgrimage of Harold Fry about?
It's about a man who's recently retired, called Harold Fry, who receives a letter out of the blue one day from somebody he hasn't seen for 20 years. And he writes his reply to her, a rather inept reply, only when he gets to the postbox he discovers he can't let go of it. And since she's written to tell him, from the other end of the country, by the way, that she's dying, he makes a decision to walk to her, believing he can save her. And that's the story. Can he do it?
Can he do it indeed? And of course, he's walking in inappropriate shoes as well, isn't he?
Well, he is. He hasn't got his mobile phone. He's wearing yachting shoes and a sort of slight waterproof jacket. I mean, he's wearing the things that you might take with you to post a letter, but not necessarily to cross the country. Mm.
Now, your background is in radio plays and TV dramas as well. And I understand that this project started out as a radio play, didn't it?
It did. It began about 8 years ago as a radio play for three actors, and it was really just the bare bones of the story because it was 45 minutes long. But it was a story that I was writing for my dad, which I don't normally do. But my dad was dying, and I decided to write him a play. I mean, I didn't tell him that I was writing him a play because he'd have been mortified. But that was how it began. Really, it was a present from my dad.
And this is your first novel, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
OK, now, I mean, I feel sorry for Harold's wife, Maureen, who he leaves alone in the house because Harold tells her that he's going to post a letter.
Yes. The thing is about the story that, as with many things in life, the big things especially, I think Harold doesn't realise he's about to do a big thing when he sets off to post his letter. And that seems to me that, life is often like that big things come at us and we don't know they're big things till afterwards. So Maureen does think that he's going to post a letter, and about 2 hours later is feeling quite irritated with him, and then suddenly finds out what he's doing. And her story is really unlike Harold's journey, which is a physical journey across the country. Hers is a journey that takes place within the confines of her home. And it's also not one that she chooses to make. So I find that quite, brave.
And you mentioned that you wrote the book for your dad. So what message do you want the book to convey?
I think when I was writing it, when I first began writing the story, I was hit with that sort of chaos of grief that we often feel when we're losing something. And for me, the book was really about connecting up. It was about those moments when you pass a stranger and you realise you have a shared something, and then you move away again. So it was sort of trying to find the joy again.
Like I mentioned, it's your first novel and it's been so well received. Congratulations. You must be so chuffed.
I'm really chuffed.
And how long did it take you to write the novel, being your first? Because obviously TV dramas and even radio plays are a lot shorter, aren't they, than novels?
Yes, I mean, radio is always much quicker for me. But this took about a year, really. And that was a year of every day doing it and pretending that I was doing other work, and then finding that I couldn't stop writing the book, and then taking it everywhere with me, and sort of being a bit obsessive, really.
Yes. And how does writing a play differ from writing a novel?
Well, for me, I'm so used to only being able to tell the story through the dialogue. And also for me, the trick of radio is that people will tell a story without really knowing that they're telling a story, so that the listener is piecing it together, without the characters sort of banging it on the head. So what was really liberating for me writing the book was that there were so many other things through which to tell the story as well. So there was the land, there was the past, there was what people do as they're talking, which I always find, very interesting. When people fiddle, I'm always fiddling as I talk. And I sometimes think my fiddling is probably more telling than what I'm saying.
So let's go back onto the book now. I mean, we mentioned Harold going on his journey to visit Queenie, who is dying. Yeah. And I do love it when he stops at a post box and he posts the letter and just says, well, look, I'm coming. I'll be there soon. Or even though he's, like you said, the other side of the country. And he meets some very interesting characters along the way as well. Tell us about some of them.
He meets lots of people. Many of whom open up to him in some strange way. And I think that's because he's a passerby, and he recognises a passerby, and he recognises that he is a passerby, and that it's easy for people to say things sometimes when they know you're not going to see them tomorrow. So he meets I mean, he meets a group of cycling mothers. He meets a silver-haired gentleman in a suit who has a sort of encounter that is the last sort of thing that Harold expects. He meets a girl, a Polish girl who's a doctor but who can't get work over here. I mean, endless people. And what surprises him, I think, is that every day we're all trying to go about the business of being ordinary, but within each of us there are these extraordinary stories.
Yeah, and Harold isn't at all judgmental, is he?
No, he's very open. He's a good, gentle man, and he doesn't judge.
And is that based on your dad? Was your dad a very good, open man?
My dad was a good man. I mean, my dad was he was more of a fighter, and he was probably became a bit more sophisticated than I think Harold is. But my dad, like Harold, sort of comes from, was brought up in pubs, and Harold has worked in a brewery. So they had things in common. And also Harold is a man who always wears a jacket and tie, and that was very definitely what my dad did. So even when I went to visit him in hospital after a particularly gruelling operation for the cancer, he had a jacket and tie on.
He still wanted to look very presentable.
It was business as usual,
yes,
please.
Yes, and Harold was walking in that sunshine, that heat.
I know, he
with
was
those shoes, the suit and the whole lot. Oh,
yeah.
Poor Harold, poor Harold. Now, you've actually been writing plays, like I said, but before that, you were actually an actress as well. So I'm wondering, was writing always on the card, and what are we going to expect next from you?
Well, I mean, I have always written. I mean, even when I was a child, I was writing, and I always wanted to write. But I was lucky. I went into acting. I loved acting, but probably I'm better suited to, I'm quite quiet. And I like to be quiet, and I like to watch. And I also like to write things down. And try and make sense of them. So I feel, even though I had a great time in acting, I've moved into the place that I should be now. And as far as looking ahead, I have finished the second book.
Called Perfect.
Called Perfect. That comes out in July. And I'm looking ahead.
Looking forward to that.
I am. I keep sort of picking up little bits and thinking, I can use this. That'll come in.
Rachel, I was saying about the reviews of this book. I mean, they go on and on and on. And of course, the debut novel, bestseller, Sunday Times.
Yeah.
Which review has been your best, do you think?
I'm terrible at reading reviews.
Oh, really?
I find it really uncomfortable. I mean, it's not that I'm not really happy that the book's done well. I'm really, really happy. But when I was acting, a lot of actors feel it's not good for you to read reviews because you either are flawed by criticism, or somebody says you've done a good bit here, and then every night as you come up to that bit in the play, you go to yourself, oh, hang on, this is my good bit. And you ruin it because you're no longer doing it. You're thinking, oh, this is my good bit. So I think there's a lot to be said for just, really just keeping your feet on the ground, like Harold, really. And, being very glad that it's been received the way it has, but just keeping true.
Yeah, well, we're very glad that it's actually our Jazz FM Book of the Week with Waterstones. Thank you
you
so much, Rachel, for coming in.
Thank you.